Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to the end of our series, our Teaching Online series today. This is the fourth of four webinars that we've been doing. My name is Sam Enneman in the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I will be your host for today's webinar. So before we get started and before I introduce our speaker, just a few guidelines. And maybe while I'm doing this, would everyone please in the chat type in the department that you're in and where you are logging in from today, like home, office, Starbucks, wherever it might be. So as I said earlier, you can type any questions or comments that you want into chat. I will be monitoring the chat while we're going along. If you'd like to ask your question verbally using your microphone, click the hand raise and we will acknowledge you that way. If you have any technical problems, of course, if you're on campus, you can call the standard help number of 750-500. If you're off of campus, the full number is 704-687-5500. And we are recording today's session, and we will be sending a link to that recording later this week. So I am very, very pleased to welcome Dr. Florence Martin from Instructional Systems Technology in the College of Education. And today is her fourth webinar, as I said, in the Teaching Online series. Her topic today is enhancing online course quality using instructional alignment. And I will just turn it over to Florence.
Thank you, Sam. And I hope my audio is coming out well. As Sam said, the presentation for today is titled Enhancing Online Course Quality Using Instructional Alignment. So before we get into the topic of today's webinar, let me quickly tell you a little bit about me. So I'm an associate professor and program director in the Instructional Systems Technology program. We are housed in the Department of Educational Leadership in the College of Education. I research in the area of online learning environments. I've done several studies in the area of e-learning, synchronous online learning, mobile learning. I've also explored learning analytics. I teach courses in the area of designing, developing, and evaluating online learning, instructional multimedia development, and instructional design. And here is a quick advertisement about the program that I'm part of. We have a master's in education and a graduate certificate in instructional systems technology in 3 different concentrations. School specialists, which is mainly if you want to be a technology facilitator in the school or integrate technology in your classroom as a teacher. Training and development is for those who want to go to the business and industry, do corporate training, be e-learning developers, or even in higher education. And then the third concentration is a new concentration in the area of online learning and teaching. So this is for faculty who are interested in learning how to teach online, also design online learning, or even manage online learning. And all these concentrations are offered at both the grad cert and at the MED level, the difference being 18 credit hours versus 36 credit hours. Here is a quick look at the certificate. Even if you're not interested, if you know somebody who might benefit from it, please spread the word. And that's the reason, I give this quick intro to my program. It's the certificate is it includes 6 courses in the area of instructional technology and online learning. Includes the design and development online learning course, learning principles, current trends, multimedia development, foundations, and instructional design. And there is a flyer that you can access from our website. Okay, so So as Sam mentioned, this is our fourth webinar today as part of the Teaching Online series. I don't know if you had a chance to attend any of the previous webinars. We started off with 10 best practices in online teaching. And then we did one on interaction, enhancing interaction in online teaching. And the third one was on enhancing instructor presence. And so the fourth one focuses on enhancing quality using instructional alignment. If you have not been able to attend any of the last three webinars, they are all recorded, and the slides are also, the PDF version of the slides are also available. And if you go to the, the CTL website where webinars are listed, you can find them from that particular website.
Before we move on, Auburn has a question. If faculty want to take the courses in your program, do we need to apply to the university just like regular students?
Thank you, Sam. I wasn't paying attention to the questions, which I should. So thank you for the question. So right now, what we do is there's two ways you could take our courses. You could enroll in the grad cert, which several of our faculty are already doing it. Interestingly, I even have tenured faculty who are taking the grad cert, which means you still have to go through the admission process through graduate school, and then you can take classes. But the good part of it is, you're eligible for 3 free courses each year. So, you can take classes for free, but you have to be ready to do the work as a student. Some faculty have told me it's really interesting because, as an instructor, it's hard to know exactly what students are going through in an online setting. So now you're on the other side of the classroom and going through these online classes on online learning in an online format. It is really interesting. And the other way to take classes, which we make exceptions, if you're not ready for grad cert but want to sample 1 or 2 classes, usually, we let students come in as post-bacs. If you're working for the university already, I don't know if you need to enroll as a post-bac or apply as a post-bac, or you can just take any classes. Again, I'm not very clear on that. I mean, I probably need to check with graduate school on that. Okay, great. Thank you. I got a student. That's why I do these webinars. Okay, so let's start talking about online learning standards. I've sectioned this webinar into 2 parts. We look at online learning standards, and then the second part we're going to talk about instructional alignment. Actually, Dr. Jason An and we have been doing a version of this webinar as a face-to-face workshop for now almost 3 semesters. Kind of the beginning of the semester, similar, I've slightly modified it. And so we thought when I was doing this webinar series, it might be nice to do a webinar out of it, along with the face-to-face workshop, because I think webinar is more convenient. Looks like it's more convenient for several of you, and you're able to log in from, without leaving your building or from home or wherever you are. So, how many of you are familiar with online learning standards? I know several of you teach online. So if you are familiar, give me a check mark. And if you give me a check mark, type in the chat window what standards you're familiar with. Have you heard about different standards? Okay, that's pretty good. Several of you, okay, QMR, Quality Matters, okay. Anything else any of you have used? Okay, the university is supporting Quality Matters. We've got on the board, was it last year? So now CTL along with DE, they've established a formal program and to support faculty who are teaching online or even who want to teach online, to go through QM training and give you support on how to design Quality Matters. Okay, any other standards that come to mind? Okay, so one more question before we get into standards. So how many of you currently teach online? Give me a check mark. Okay, so just one person, Auburn, right? A. Hutchins, okay. And Okay, so I'm assuming the others are interested in teaching online at some point, or maybe you're teaching blended, or or even you might be able to apply this in another setting, design online courses. So I assume that that is your interest. Um, Several of us teach online, but there are a set of standards that can guide us how to design online learning. A lot of times, when we teach online, what happens is, or when we ask to teach online, we already have experience teaching face to face. We take the content that we used to teach in a face to face classroom, put it on our LMS, and convert it into an online course. So the intention of today's presentation is to introduce you to certain set of standards that you can apply, when you do the conversion from online, from face-to-face to blended, or blended to an online setting. So again, one more question before we move on. What do we mean by quality in an online course? Again, I talked about, enhancing quality. And we talked about quality matters, which is, I think, an appropriate title for that particular rubric. So when we use the term quality in an online course, what does that mean to you? So quality in a face-to-face class might be something different from quality in an online course. Can you give me some keywords? Can you type in the chat window? What are you looking for? Okay, good. User-friendly, objective alignment. Okay, excellent. I'm waiting to see a few more responses. Engaging, excellent. They're all very, very important. Engaging content, yep. Interactive, that's very, very essential. And we did a whole webinar on enhancing interactivity, making sure students understand the concepts. Excellent. Thank you. So those are all excellent terms. So what we are going to do is we are going to look at some of the standards and see what quality means, based on these particular standards. So I'm going to introduce you to 5 standards today. Actually, there's a lot more. I have a couple of papers I'm working on in this area, and every country, even, several of the countries have their own set of accreditation agency and quality standards. There's some really neat standards out of Canada, South Africa, Australia. Europe has their own, a number of own initiatives, but these are ones that, I think more US based, and so we'll just look at that, not specific to a country, but then we all can take and apply. If you're not already familiar with the Online Learning Consortium, I would love to introduce you to the Online Learning Consortium. It used to be called Sloan Consortium, but then they just did a name change maybe a couple of years ago, and they actually have a couple of rubrics coming out of it. So OLC has a journal in the area of online learning. They have 2 or 3 conferences in the area of online learning, and a lot of initiatives, a lot of research, workshops, webinars, and if you're especially interested in the area of online learning, one that I would definitely recommend you to look at. So the one that I want to introduce you is the quality scorecard. They also have another rubric, but this is the one. Let's look at this. So the scorecard is used to measure and quantify elements of quality within an online education program. And this is actually based on 9 categories. And, some of the rubrics that I'm going to show you today, it may not be at the course level. Okay, it might be at the program level or even at the institution level. So, take it and apply it as you see fit. Some rubrics are going to be at the course level, which might be appropriate for those of you who are teaching online. But some of these are, even higher level at the program level, how you can increase quality in online learning. So the 9 categories we're talking about here are institutional support, which is very, very, very important when you have online learning going on, and which I think our institution is already doing a great job, and they're ready to support us wherever there is a need. Technology support, we have a lot of infrastructure that we need. We are going through some, new changes with technology that we hope will also, enhance this. And course development support, course development and instructional design support. We have CTL housed here. This workshop itself is part of that support, right? You have one-on-one support that you can gain access to. And then course structure. So that's neat. They're specifically pointing on how your course has to be structured to enhance quality, and then broader frameworks of teaching and learning, and then social and student engagement, faculty support, student support, and evaluations and assessment. I am not going to go into each of these in detail. My intention was to introduce you to these frameworks or rubrics, but then I'm going to focus only on one today because my intention is to take you in the area of instructional alignment. Thank you for helping me with the highlighter. Uh, so the next one is the Blackboard Exemplary Rubric. If you've not heard about it. And the OLC rubric, actually, I think you have to be a member to access it. And I think UNC Charlotte is a member institution. So if you're doing any program level initiatives and if you want to take a look at the rubric, you should be able to contact DE and see if they can get that rubric for you. We are not a Blackboard campus, but this is one of my favorite rubrics. I think, it is not LMS specific. Any person who's teaching online can still benefit from this rubric. And I actually used to teach at a Blackboard campus, and so I've been part of this exemplary program, and I've submitted my course once. So, it kind of gave me an opportunity to see all the different elements of the rubric that, you need to work on to consider your course as, high quality or exemplar. So here they have 17 key characteristics. And the 17 characteristics are divided in the framework of, it's actually, I think, 5. Course design, interaction and collaboration, assessment and learner support. Actually, 4. Sorry, 4. And so, for example, I just brought one a screenshot, and I have links, but I know you cannot click on these links. They're not interactive. But what we'll do is at the end of the presentation, Sam will be loading this PDF on the website, and when you have the PDF, you can click on these links and you can open them, or you could Google them too if you want to have it in hand while I'm talking through this. So what Blackboard has done is, Blackboard used to be a leading LMS. Now we have several other LMSs who have definitely, captured the market. But this rubric is still, I think, an excellent one. So if you look at, I just gave you one out of the 17 elements. I didn't put all in there. So this is goals and objectives, which we all know is very critical, right? So they give you characteristics on, what is exemplary. When you consider your course to be exemplary, what do you need to do with goals and objectives? I know you cannot read. It's just a sample visual. The quality is not good. And then accomplished, what characteristics need to be there if you consider your course as accomplished? And then what characteristics need to be there if it is promising or finally incomplete? So, it's great for self-evaluation. And as I said, the 17 elements that they have is not specific to Blackboard. It can be used for any of the LMSs. It's in the area of course design, which is very important. And then interaction and collaboration. And I saw that come up in our comments earlier when I asked the question, what is important to you in quality? So they pay a lot of importance to interaction and collaboration. So course design is important, interaction and collaboration is important, and in the area of assessment. Because, sometimes the way we do assessment in a traditional class, face-to-face class, is very different from the online environment. So we have to pay careful attention on how we are converting those assessments in the online setting. And finally, learner support. Again, very, very important. And so we know that, when the students are right there in front of us, it's easy for us to provide support. They have questions, you're able to answer. But then when they're online, it's easy for them to be isolated, right? So different levels of support is important, course related, or technical support. So, establishing all that is very, very important. So there are several items in that area which I would encourage you to look at. And the third one is INECOL, and this may not be relevant to several of you. This is in the area of K to 12, but I thought maybe we have folks from the College of Education, or and then there's also this increasing number of online courses that we are beginning to see right from the middle school level. schools are able to offer online courses, all the specialized courses, because if you're not able to find instructors, it's easy for the district to send your students to an online course that the district has already invested in. So we are seeing a growth in that. I was actually told that so we have North Carolina Virtual Public High School, which is catering entirely to the high school population with online courses. We also have, I heard in the Charlotte area, we have two virtual schools, virtual charter schools that have recently started. So I think, even in the K-12 environment, we are seeing a lot more online learning happening. So I wanted to introduce you to that rubric. And they have several rubrics. So the one that I brought in was actually specifically on standards for quality online courses. And then they also have another rubric for quality online teaching. I thought it was neat how they separated it, because some rubrics focus on the course design, right? Like the Blackboard Exemplary one is on the course design. Quality Matters focuses a lot on course design. And the facilitation sometimes comes later, how you're teaching it. So they have separate rubrics on that aspect. So, and there might be something we might benefit from that rubric too. So, and those rubrics are all public, and anybody could download it. It's free. So I wanted to share that with you. And here's another organization called CHEA, which is a Council for Higher Education Accreditation. So it's a large organization, but what they have done is they have specifically gone ahead and identified specific characteristics that enhances quality of distance learning. So that's one that I wanted to introduce you to. So there are 7 areas. So if you see in the screenshot, it gives you the description too. So this is again a little bit more broader. It's not at the course level, you can see. Maybe some are at the course level, but some are more program and institutional level too. Institutional mission, institutional organizational structure, institutional resources, curriculum and instruction, faculty support, and student learning outcomes. So that's another one that I thought I'll quickly introduce you to. And finally, which several of you are familiar with, is I wanted to bring you to Quality Matters. We've had several faculty showcases, right? At least 4 showcases. If you've not had a chance to look at those, I would highly encourage you to watch the recording, because these are showcases where faculty showed how they've applied the Quality Matters rubric in their own courses. And we have access to this rubric as an institution. So the Quality Matters, it's a process to certify quality of online courses. It's gone through several editions, and the 5th edition, which came out in 2014, it has 8 general standards. And then among the 8 general standards, there are 43 specific review standards, very important standards. And these are, again, all focus mostly on course design and not on facilitation. So, the importance, how much of importance we are giving even to design the course. And the 8 standards that, the Quality Matters rubric reviews is learning overview and introduction, course overview and introduction. So how important it is to provide an overview and introduction, providing measurable learning objectives, assessment and measurement, providing a variety of instructional material, course activities and learner interaction, course technology, learner support and accessibility and usability. So those are the 8 particular standards. Again, I'm not going to spend time today talking in specific about all the 8 categories, but they are very important. So with introducing, we know that there are several initiatives in place. There are standards that we can rely on to take and implement to enhance quality in our online courses. With that being said, I want to quickly transition into instructional alignment, and then I'm going to tie this back into Quality Matters. For several of us, this might sound, oh, it's just simple, it's easy to do, it's common sense. But, the reason I'm doing this presentation today is to reinforce, it might be a simple thing, but it is a very, very critical thing. So it is important important for us to pay attention to instructional alignment. And here are two definitions, and this is from one of my earlier publication. I've included some references at the last slide if you want to go read that article. So instructional alignment is a process by which different instructional elements are connected to each other, and in the end makes the instructional material effective. That's very broad. And then, I also said it's defined as aligning curriculum with appropriate goals, objectives, content, teaching strategies, and assessment. Again, I wrote these definitions about 8 years ago. So again, it is about bringing in all the different elements in your course together. So that is very, very important. And sometimes, there's also a term that's used called curriculum alignment. So, but instructional alignment is slightly different from curriculum alignment. Curriculum alignment is usually, mapping your curriculum with set of standards. So we are not going to go into that broad, mapping. We are going to focus on the different elements in your course and how you are aligning it. So coming to our quality matters standards. So here are the 8 standards. And so if there's one thing that, I would say is a takeaway from this QM rubric, it is alignment. That's the reason I'm here to stress on that. And we are very particular about it, and it makes a difference when you have that alignment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you all the standards that are connected to this alignment. So out of the 8 categories, so if you see, these are categories 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So category 2 is on learning objectives, 3 was on assessment, 4 was on instructional materials, 5 was on learning activities, and 6 was on course technology. So if you look at this, all the number ones, point 1, and if you're not familiar with the QM standards, QM standards has, it is a rubric which has its totals up to 99 points. You can earn 99 points in your course, and I think you need to have 84 points for your course to pass, but then it also has 3 different types of standards. So the points are valued at 1, 2, or 3. I don't know if the screenshot says that. You cannot probably see, do you see a column, oh, let me see if I can. So this column here, where it says points, and it's listed 1, 2, and 3. So there are some standards which are called as essential standards, which is a 3-pointer. So, even if you miss a single 3-point standard, your course will not pass review, because they show how important that is. And if you look at these standards here, I think all these are 3-pointers. I didn't actually cross-check, but I think they are. Yeah, Sam is nodding. So, because they stress on the alignment, importance of alignment. Thank you, Sam, for giving us that figures. Yeah, so 84 points or 85% of your course to pass a QM review. I'm still curious why they stopped at 99 points and didn't make it 100 points to make it easier on us with the math, but I guess that's what it is. So, 2.1 is the course learning objectives or course program competencies describe outcomes that are measurable. So that's a straight standard. We're going to start with that. We need to have measurable. So if you don't have measurable objectives, refer to resources on Bloom's taxonomy to find measurable verbs that you can use. CTL has resources, and we want to include both goals and objectives that are measurable. And I'm going to show you some examples as we go. Okay, and then when you go to 3.1, which is the next category, this is interesting. So do you see how it ties back to 2.1? The assessments measure the stated learning objectives or competencies. So you're starting off your assessment category with a connection to your objectives. So that is where the alignment comes in, right? So 3.1 is connected to 2.1, and they exactly want to see you having assessments for that particular objective. Sometimes, we have this nice course, we have objectives, material, but then we have assessments in the end. But how much of thought you're putting in when you create those assessments to exactly measure what your objective was set to teach? So that is what this is referring to. The assessment measures the stated learning objectives or competencies. So now moving on, 4.1. Okay, before we go to 4.1, there's one more thing I wanted to share. So I'm an instructional designer, right? I teach in the Instructional Systems Technology program. So when we teach students how to design instruction, so as soon as you write your objectives, we tell them to design assessments. We don't tell them to design instructional material. That is because, like a course with a specific objective should be able to measure exactly what that objective was set to do. So it should not exactly revolve around the material, but revolve around the objective. So that's interesting, right? So that is how the ID process usually works. You start with objectives and then you do assessment before you even go to materials. So it's interesting because even in the QM rubric, assessment doesn't come later on as an afterthought. It is right there at number 3. Overview and introduction, objectives, and then comes assessment. So now let's look at 4.1. So now we are moving on to instructional materials. So now again, if you carefully read this, instructional materials contribute to the achievement of the stated course and module /unit learning objectives or competencies. Again, do you see the alignment? So they want you to include materials that contribute to the achievement of the directly aligned to that particular module /unit learning objectives. So for every objective you put in there, the measurable objective, you need to have instructional material aligned to that. So, we all love to put a lot of instructional material, like, a lot of resources, readings, but then, we have to pay careful attention that the material that we are providing is aligned to our learning objective. And it could be at the module level or unit level, however you're setting up your course. So that is number 4.1. And going to 5.1, which is again now connected back to what you have above. So learning activities. So now you have the material and then you have activities, right? We all have a lot of interaction and activities. Any discussions you do, any form of activities like synchronous sessions that you do. So all these activities should promote the achievement of the stated learning objectives or competencies. So again, do you see how it's connected back to 2.1? So I think, so 3.1 ties back to 2.1, 4.1 ties back to 2.1, 5.1 ties back to 2.1, and then 6.1 is on tools. So this is the one on course technology. So even the tools that you use in your course should support your learning objectives. One thing that I see here is, so each of the 3.1, 4.1, 5.1, 6.1 ties back to 2.1, but I would say they also tie back to each other. I don't see that specifically called out here, but I think it's important for all these to tie back to each other. So the tools you use, should support your learning activities, should support your instructional material. So, it kind of should be connected as well. So those are like 5, I showed you 5 standards out of the 43. But these are all essential standards, and then they stress on the area of instructional alignment. Let's pause and quickly take questions. I forgot to ask if there were any questions at the end of when I introduced you to several quality standards in online learning. I know several of you are asking questions as we go. We are almost at the 11:30 time frame. So any questions so far? So those of you who have already used QM Rubric, have you paid attention to the standards? Oh, sure. You want to go to the CHEA slide? Okay. One more. Here is it. Okay. And you will get access to the slides. Sam will be sending them out. Or you could even email me if you need it right away. So any questions on the instructional alignment that I just showed you? So now when you look at a QM rubric, you're going to pay attention to these numbers, right? These are not going to get overlooked. Okay, so I'm going to show you examples now. This is the fun part, right? How do you do it? So what do I do in my course? So this is a course that I teach on design, development, and evaluation of online learning. You might have seen the course. So what I do is I start off the course with overview, and then I give goals, course goals. So I use the term goals. Different places you see different terminology. Some of them say competency, some of them say outcomes. Again, these might mean the same thing. What I do is I call them as course goals, and then I call this more specific module level objectives as module objectives. So my course goals are broad broad learning outcomes that the students achieve at the end of the course. So in this case, I have four, 1, 2, 3, 4, and what I did is I put in parentheses, I called it as CG. Right? And if you see, some of the verbs I use are analyze, identify, apply, discuss. The first one also has design, develop, evaluate, but these are all measurable. Okay, so you are able to, in the end, measure these. It's very common, like, when I review goals and objectives, I see terms like understand, students will learn. So these are terms that you cannot really measure because they are like internal processes. So, like, at the end of the semester, how will you know whether the student understood something? So, that's why it's important for us to use measurable terms. So, I showed you an example of course goals, and there's a reason I'm starting at the course goal level. So now, this is how I set up my course. You don't have to do this. I do it in a table format in Moodle. You can put one below the other two. You could have objectives and then your instructional material and then your activities. That would be the best thing to do, right? You're following the QM rubric, giving them, in the sequence that they are talking about. So if you look at my objectives, so this is like an introduction to, it's the first module. Actually, my modules, I set them by weeks. Sorry, it's weekly objectives, not module objectives. I've learned, that, and actually I also got this confirmed from a student. So I know several faculty do modules. She said, I'm glad, you do weeks and there is something to do every week, because even if you set up by modules, give us 2-3 weeks, we're always waiting for the last week to work on it. So I do weekly activities and, set it up a week. It's a little more work because, then you have 15 weekly content that's going on. So if you look at this table, objectives, readings and resources, e-lesson, discussion, assignment, and reflection. Right? So it's a 6-cell tables, and I've differentiated. So the top 3 is content and the bottom 3 is activities. And the one I wanted to show you is like the objectives, objectives part here. So I have 3 objectives for this particular week. They're just learning, this is the first objective in the course. Describe online learning, identify institutional resources available for online teaching and learning, identify best practices in online teaching by reviewing a sample online learning course and from the literature. So what else do you see? Do you see in the parentheses I've listed something? CG1, CG2, CG3. So do you all know what that means? What could that mean? Type it in the chat window. Course goals, perfect. So I'm giving you a reference back to saying this objective is aligned to this particular course goal. So you cannot get any more clearer than that, right? So showing that mapping, and I do this for every week, and it's actually not very hard to do. It requires a little bit more effort, but then, if you have 2-3 broad course goals, it's easy to split your objectives and, see where it fits in. And if you don't have a course goal for a particular objective, that means you need to have a course goal, or, you're just doing an objective which is not aligned with that course goal. So something something is missing. So that is the first alignment that I do. And I do this for each week and put it in parentheses right next to the objective and call it as give you which course goal I'm aligning it with. And then after that, so as we saw in the rubric, so we started with the course goals, and then it starts with assignments. However, in a course, even you assign assessments, even though you design the assessment, I cannot put my assessment cell in the second place after the objective, right? So it comes later on. So again, there is an overlap between activities and assessment, so you can consider activities as formative, where students are still getting feedback, and assessments could be summative. But you could still give feedback on summative too, but it could be like, an end of course project or an end of semester tests you do. So I have like an assignment cell here. Here right now it just says topic, but this kind of builds on. So this is like a 6-phase project, and they are building a whole course. They build 3 modules. So they analyze, they get to know their audience and, design the course, create a syllabus, and then they build one module, then they build 3 modules, and then they also evaluate it. So that's what's happening as part of the assignment. So that particular assignment and activities also should be aligned to your objectives. So some objectives here, describing online learning is not directly here, but if you look at my discussion, I made sure that, that is getting talked about in the discussion. So, they post on it. I asked them, what is your definition of online learning? And then I asked them to explore their own institution where they are at. Or if they don't have an institution, use UNC Charlotte as their institution and identify resources. And I also asked them to list best practices according to them based on, the literature review and reviewing a sample course. So that is the level of alignment, that makes it very clear for the students. The discussion is directly aligned with the objectives. And I also do a reflection, which is more, again, there is some kind of an alignment. So this is to get feedback from the students. What I do is I ask a 3-point question each week, actually a 3-question reflection. Sorry, it's a 5-point, 3-question. I ask them, what do you learn from this week? No, what did you benefit from this week's content? What challenged you? And how do you apply what you learned this week in your current or future job setting? And that helps me know, what were the challenges or what were the benefits before we progress on to the next week. And then, so I actually, from objectives, I directly went into assessment and activities to show you the alignment. But then now coming to instructional material, so your objectives, again, need to be aligned. So are you giving enough of resources for all these 3 objectives here? So these are a combination of, this is a book chapter reading. It's a great book if you haven't checked it out. It's, I think it's called Teaching Online. Yeah, Teaching Online by Cohen Rossin. And then I gave the sample online course. This is from Liberty University. It's a free course. I looked for some free courses. Anybody could check it out. And then towards best practices in online learning and teaching, those are a couple of articles. This is a great resource. I also share with them on best practices. So, making sure that there are resources that are directly aligned with objectives. And what I call it as an e-lesson is actually, I don't like the term lecture, so I use the term e-lesson. It's a 10-minute overview or a summary of, all these resources and my own, additional thoughts that I share. It's a Camtasia recording to support those objectives. So do you see the alignment? Do you think I'm capturing the alignment from 2.1 to 3.1 to 4.1 to 5.1 and to 6.1? 6.1 was course technology. Any questions on how I'm doing this? Couple of other resources I want to share, and these are coming out directly from textbooks. These are two textbooks I use in this course, and they all stress on the importance of alignment. This is from Stavridis and Herder, a guide to online course design, and they take an instructional design approach, and they use a different framework. It's just a 3-cell, a 3-column. So outcomes and competencies. So that was the example that was given. Integrate critical thinking to provide local arguments, and the assessment was a final writing product. And then the instructional material was, directly aligned to what they need to do that particular task. So this was from this particular author. And this is from Cohen Rossin. So actually, I didn't give their specific examples. So, but what they're recommending, so you have your objectives, and then they recommend doing instructor-generated content as well. I know several courses, getting instructor-generated content is a lot more work, right? When there are free resources, book chapters or web readings or videos that we could just link. This takes effort to create one and link. But they recommend it, and so they call it as lectures. So providing that directly aligned with objectives, and then class interactions and activities. So here the recommendation is discussion, and then supplementing with readings, web resources, that's like textbooks, any other web readings, and then assignment. Their recommendation was like an online test. So these are examples. It doesn't mean you have to do just this. These are just examples to show how you could align to meet that particular instructional objective. So I'm giving you two tables from two authors, and again stressing on the importance of instructional alignment. So again, this is just the same table. I thought, since I've showed you those two authors, so again I'm trying to do, I have my objectives, I have my instructor generated material, I have my web resources, book chapter readings, discussion, and this is my version of assessment. We don't do tests. I teach in a graduate program, so not a whole lot of like quizzes. I do quizzes rarely when I think I need the students to know learn content at more at the lower level of the Bloom's web, more like facts and concepts, and otherwise it's usually at a higher level of application oriented. You see how we're taking what the authors say and we're trying to apply it in my course. I wanted to show you one more table. So when I sent my courses for QM review, I actually have 3 courses QM certified, and I have 2 more under review, which I'm hoping will go through in the next couple of weeks. This was encouraged by one of our own instructional designers, actually from CHHS. Bruce Richards encouraged me to put this table in because since Quality Matters supports and they kind of stress on the importance of online learning, and he said, why don't you do a table that shows the alignment? I have tables per week, but this is at the course level. And so what I did was, okay, let's do it. So each week, I have my objectives and activities and assessments. So just those 3 to show that, what is aligned to what kind of. I've not split it by objective, it's more by the week again, but it's still helpful, right? So the students know exactly, even at the beginning of the semester, okay, so to meet this objective, you're doing this activity and do this assignment. I've laid my course in a table format, so it is clear, but still doing this additional step at the course level to show them, here is the alignment. And it really, stresses on the importance of alignment. So I wanted to show you that particular example. So we are at 11:45. I actually didn't have a whole lot of slides. Again, as I said, it might sound like a very simple topic, but it's very, very important. And that's the reason that, we decided to do this webinar on instructional alignment today. Any questions? Okay, so I have a quick activity, and we used to do this activity face to face when you are here, so it's going to be a little more challenging to do it synchronously, but I want you to think about it. So here, I've given you a sample. So I think this is the same sample that I showed you. Identify best practices. It's the 3rd objective of that week 1. Identify best practices in online teaching, and I have an example e-lesson, and then I have the discussion question that I include in the discussion, and then I have the web resources I give, and then I have an assessment or assignment, which is like, part of the assessment. What I want you to do is I want you to take a minute and think about one objective in your course and think about how aligned it is. Pick any one objective, and I want you to spend a couple of minutes. So you have your objective. Do you have aligned like instructor generated material or readings and web resources, and what type of class interaction and activities, and what type of assessment? And I would love to hear examples from you guys. If you're already doing it, excellent. We can share it to everybody. If you're not doing it, definitely, there is room for us to pay attention to it and work on it. Do I have any volunteers? Nobody wants to volunteer? Do you all need a minute to think? Anything you want to share from courses you teach, or even workshops you teach? Any examples that might benefit the others? Okay. I don't want to call on somebody. I'm tempted to call on Khalil because he's one of my students, but I'll be nice to him today. You're welcome, Khalil. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our presentation today. I'm done 10 minutes early. So for those of you who came late, Here is another quick look at the online learning and teaching certificate, the concentration that is offered through the IST program. If you or anybody who you know might be interested, please send them our way. It's the certificate is, it includes six courses at the graduate level, which teaches you how to design online learning. Including giving you the theoretical background and also the technology skills. And so this is the last webinar. And here are the references, the three references I used if you're interested in checking out the books, the Cohen-Rossen book and the Stavridis book. And then that's the article that I used. And for most of the standards, I put in the links in there, so I did not include them in the references because I was referring directly to the rubric. So that was my last slide, and I know Sam has a few things to say.
Yes, so let's thank you, Florence, for an excellent presentation there. I just wanted to bring up this website. We were talking about Quality Matters earlier, and this is our website regarding Quality Matters at UNC Charlotte. So you feel free to visit that, and I have typed the URL into the text chat. It's just teaching.uncc.edu/quality matters, and you can find out all about how we are going about implementing quality matters here. Before we end, I would just like to point out one more webinar that we have coming up, and that happens to be tomorrow. Judy Walker from Atkins Library is going to be talking about open educational resources and how you can use those for you and your students. So it's a very interesting topic, and we invite you to attend that workshop again tomorrow. And finally, before we leave, it's about this time, so I'm offering everybody a nice dessert, a virtual dessert for lunch. So please maybe indicate which, using these text tools, if you just indicate which is your favorite. I'm very partial to the fudged out myself. So in wrapping up, just wanted to thank all of you for attending and remind you that we will be sending a link to the recording later this week, and we will also post Florence's slides that she used in this presentation on the webinar registration page. So thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar or CTL workshop.